Okay, let's get started again. The next passage touches on two of the most intriguing aspects of life and work. The first one is that some people have the capacity for enjoyment and others have no capacity for enjoyment. And it has nothing to do whether you're rich or poor or whatever your place in life. Some people simply enjoy life and other people are not given that gift. In fact, there's a psychological symptom which is recognizable. It's called ahedonia, the inability to enjoy or take pleasure in anything. The complete loss of the capacity for enjoyment. Where does that come from? How does it work? It obviously is something to do with good health. You know, if you're sick, you don't enjoy your food. But there's something else. You know, you can have a perfectly healthy person who enjoys nothing. Has everything to enjoy and yet enjoys nothing. That's the first phenomenon that this next passage is going to touch on. The second one is even stranger. Have you noticed that when you are doing something and doing it well and you become so utterly engrossed in it that you don't notice the time passing? This is amazing. Sometimes I can sit and work all morning and it seems like 5 minutes. And my wife Claire says, "Aren't you going to have a break?" And I say, hey, and I look at the time and see it's been 3 hours since I started. On the other hand, it's the opposite. Sometimes you get so engrossed in something just in that moment that you lose all sense of time. It could have been 1 minute or it could have been 5 hours. Right? That when you are engrossed in your work and enjoying it, you somehow stand outside of time and you go to a place that's almost eternal. Have you noticed that? Okay, now this next passage is the central passage, and I'm going to preach on this tonight in church and tomorrow. So I'll limit myself to the most obvious things here. The fourth counsel. Indeed, I myself have seen that it is good, that it is beautiful. Remember, everything's beautiful in its time, okay? I've seen what is good, the beautiful thing that I was talking about previously. It's beautiful to eat and drink and rejoice and see what's good in one's work, which one does under the sun the few days that God has given him, for that is his lot. That's a summary of what's been said. It's not new. Now comes the new thing. It's also a gift from God that anyone whom God has given wealth and possessions has the ability or the capacity or the power to eat from them and to accept his lot and to rejoice in his work. Now the capacity for three things. The capacity to accept, receive your lot, receive what God gives as a gift and accept it and be content with it. To eat from what you need from your work and to rejoice in his work. For he will hardly notice, or he will hardly remember, I'd translate notice, the days of his life because God keeps him occupied with joy in his heart. Now, if you have the gift of joy in your life, it doesn't matter whether your life is short or long, you have a full life. On the other hand, if you have no capacity for enjoyment, you are plagued by boredom and life seems endless and eternal. Okay. This passage begins with a summary of the first three passages with an emphasis on the limited time for rejoicing here on earth. So life here on earth is limited. Now we have, if we like, 70 or 80 years. 70 is what we can expect if God blesses us. Anything over 70 is bonus. And anything beyond 80 is a complete special favour from God. That's life here on earth. We have a limited life. And we have limited time for rejoicing. If I don't rejoice in what's given to me today, I'll never be able to enjoy today. Now, quite obviously, if I don't enjoy being here with you guys today, I'll never have this moment again. Every day, rejoicing. Rejoicing every day in what's given to rejoice. Now, previously, Ecclesiastes had said that joy and the ability to see what's good in work is a gift from God. So it's a gift from God. Not that you have work, that's a gift from God, but the greater gift is to see what's good in your work and to enjoy your work and to enjoy eating and drinking that comes as a result of your work. But an even greater gift of God is the capacity for enjoyment. The capacity which involves three things, and this is immensely wise, and I could spend hours just unpacking the ramifications of this. Number one, the first thing he says, it's a gift from God that he has the capacity to eat from them. Now, eating from them means, okay, let's say you're a farmer and you get produce and you eat from them. It doesn't mean that you try and eat everything, but you eat what you need for enjoyment from them. One of the things that strikes me coming here to the US is how there's two things that strike me is how people overindulge in food in order to comfort themselves, it seems to me. And as a result of this, how many obese people are here. Much more so than in Australia. It's quite obvious. People don't just eat from food, but they take more than they need for enjoyment. And it's quite obvious. If I'm going to enjoy food, I will take as much as I need, because if I eat more than that, then I have a stomach ache and I bloated, and the joy goes out of it. Or you can see it most obviously with wine. Now, Scott and Kirby and I had a nice bottle of wine last night. The secret for joy was to drink from it enough to make us feel good, but not to push it too far. You know what happens if you push it too far. At least I know what happens if I push it too far. That's the first thing, is to eat from the things that God gives you. Just some of it, not all of it. You get some people that basically want to consume everything. They're all belly. They're consumers. It's a funny picture that we have of, we live in a consumer society where we try and eat everything in the hope that it gives us comfort and joy. The second thing is even more important. The capacity to accept his lot. Now, dissatisfaction is one of the biggest problems in human life. The result of the fall is that we always think that we've been given less and others have been given more. And so we envy them and we find it hard to accept our lot. I find it hard to accept the fact that I'm not beautiful or athletic, or I don't have these abilities or those gifts in life. Now, the secret for enjoyment is to accept the lot that God gives you. It's a gift from God. You've been given some things that nobody else in the world has. Your lot is unique. Nobody else has received your particular allotment. And instead of then comparing yourself with other people, you need to take it as a gift and accept it and be content with what you have. The third thing, the third capacity is to rejoice in work. Everybody has to work, but only some people not only see what's good in their work, but they actually rejoice in their work. Now, there's a whole scale of things. Everybody has to work, okay? That's given for us as human beings. Only some people see what's good in their work, and to see what's good, you need to do good work. You need to give yourself to your work. You need to throw yourself in your work. But only some people, even who have that, actually rejoice in their work. Wonderful picture. God rejoices in his work, the Old Testament says, that Scriptures say, and God wants us to rejoice not just in his work, but to rejoice in working together with him here on earth and sharing in his joy. So the capacity for enjoyment, three things: limited consumption. Secondly, acceptance of lot. Thirdly, rejoicing, not just in food, but rejoicing in work. Enjoyment of work, we call it. Now, what's the result of these three capacities, these three abilities, these three powers? Well, just listen to it again. For he will hardly remember or notice the days of his life, because God has kept him occupied with joy in his heart. Quite plainly, you don't notice the passing of time. And even if you do notice the passing of time, it doesn't matter. So at my stage in life, I enjoy things now, and it's not a great issue to me that I'm 70 years old and retired, and that I've only got, well, how many years I've got? Who knows? But realistically speaking, at the most I've got 10 more years. It doesn't matter. I don't notice the passing of time. And if I look back at the best periods of my life is where things passed and it went so quickly, and I was enjoying stuff so much that the question of the period of time didn't arise. But most importantly, as I said before, you're doing something, you're engrossed in your work, and you go into a different place. You don't notice the passing of time. You are outside of time or beyond time, and you are given a foretaste of eternity in time in this way. Little moments where you glimpse of what it's likely to be in eternity, because you in eternity won't be engrossed in work, but will engross enjoying God and each other and all the gifts of God. And so much so that the focus won't be on ourselves, but the focus will be on what's outside of us. Now, one of the plagues of our society is boredom. No? Most people are bored. The opposite of the capacity for enjoyment is boredom, chronic boredom that plagues most people in our society. I can say quite honestly that I don't think I have ever been really bored. And I count that as a great gift from God. It's not because of who I am or what I've done, but because of God's gift to me. I can understand people being bored, but the great joy is never being bored with anything, either with my work or leisure, bored with my marriage, bored with my children, bored with my work, bored with life in general. Now, so you have the four counsels which Ecclesiastes looks at life and sees what you can discover about life here on planet Earth. Okay, now you get a shift. He comes to what he commends then. What's the advice that he gives to us? And that then leads to certain bits of advice. Let's have a look at the next, which is very simple. The fifth counsel in chapter 8, verse 15. So I myself commend, I recommend for you joy or rejoicing. No, and that's surprising. I would expect him to say, I recommend that you enjoy eating and drinking and you enjoy work. But he says, no, I recommend that you recommend joy or rejoicing for you. For there's nothing as good for a person under the sun as to eat and drink and rejoice. So that the rejoicing will encircle him like a wreath in his work all the days that God has given him under the sun. So this is the first conclusion, the recommendation of rejoicing. Now, normally speaking, when you look at life, you have certain occasions in life which are occasions of rejoicing. The birth of a baby, marriage, birth of grandchild, Christmas, Easter, those kind of occasions. You have times for rejoicing. When you have a party, you rejoice. Now, what's Ecclesiastes saying? God wants us not just to have occasional moments of joy, rejoicing, but he wants our whole life, including our work life, not just the eating and drinking part of life, but our whole life to be one of rejoicing. That's what God wants to give us. Now, the picture that's used here is of a wreath on one's head. Kings had wreaths on their head. When people got married, both bride and bridegroom wore wreaths on their head. You may know that in Greece, when an athlete won a race, the only prize that would be given would be a wreath. Now, a wreath is an indication of divine honours or divine status or divine favour. The king wears a crown, which is a stylized wreath on his head, to show that he enjoys God's favour. He is working together with God. Bride and bridegroom in marriage wear a wreath because they have, if you like, they're king and queen for the day, and they're king and queen in marriage. So instead of just wearing a wreath at one point in your life, maybe when you get married, Ecclesiastes said, wear a wreath the whole of your life, because God wants to give you his joy for the whole of your life. It doesn't mean that the whole of life is a party, but the same sort of joy that you have in a party, God wants to give you at every moment of your life. So instead of occasional rejoicing in God's gift of joy, as at the 3 Jewish festivals or weddings or meals, there's the recommendation here that God wants us to continually rejoice in all the work that God gives us to do in this life. So instead of just rejoicing in leisure, meals, it's rejoicing in work. Can you see what a strange twist that is? Rejoicing in work. Now comes the practical application in 2 sets of remarkable passages that I just love. The first one, the 6th counsel. But just before I get onto that, are there any questions or remarks? Yes, at the back there.
I have a question. The word rejoice
Yes.
is not typically a word you use frequently outside of church. Can you expound a little bit about the ramifications? What is rejoice? About being happy, but it's also about being thankful?
No.
Can you say more about that?
Yes. There's a big difference in scriptures between happiness and joy. Happiness is an emotional state. It comes and goes, whereas joy remains. You can be joyful not just at Easter but also at Good Friday. You can have joy at the funeral of your parents. Joy is not something that comes and goes. It's not a fleeting emotion, but it is a state of being. And it's hard to define because it is we have manifestations of it, but it's basically eternal. It comes from God. Rejoicing, it has the term for rejoice is very closely connected with joy. So you rejoice in the thing that gives you joy. It's not the same as happiness, although some of the symptoms of joy are the same as happy. You know, if I rejoice, I'm happy, but happiness is not joy. I can be happy without joy. But happiness comes and goes. Happiness passes. It's just something that's emotional. Whereas joy has to do with being caught up in something bigger than you that's outside you. Yes? Vico?
You gave the example of rejoicing or experiencing joy at a funeral.
Yes.
There's a sense in which that's a little bit, we can understand that because we rejoice in the future life.
Yes.
What about when we encounter evil, things that are
Yes.
certainly not good?
Okay, that's Ecclesiastes has a lot to say about that, which I can't even begin to summarise. But you don't rejoice in what's bad. Even in your work, there's going to be bad things in any person's work. There's going to be bad days. There's going to be bad parts of your life. But even in the bad parts, God is at work. If we have eyes to see, even in the worst situation at work, there's something potentially good. Even if it's only potentially good, there's an opportunity for good. Speaking just before, I was speaking to you about the difficult work situation, that there's the opportunity, maybe, not that there's anything obviously good, but there's the opportunity to do something good, and therefore to see what's good that's brought into that bad situation. Right? God is at work not just in the good parts of our life to give us joy. It's not just in our leisure, but also our work, and not just in the, it's obvious when the good part of work, but also the bad part of work. God is at work, creating the possibilities or opportunities or occasions for joy and enjoyment. Personally, if I look back on my life, I have the greatest joy in retrospect of looking back on the most difficult pastoral situations I've been through, and to see how, when I expected this to be an utter disaster and nothing good to come from it, what's God done? He's brought good out of it. And even at the time, I might have been stressed out of my brain, but the joy of my ministry, the joy of my work wasn't lost even in the problems that I had and the suffering that I experienced. You see, we Christians have, just as Jesus had joy even on the cross, we have joy in suffering. Doesn't mean that suffering's good, but we have that gift of joy even in that situation. That's going a little bit beyond Ecclesiastes, though, to New Testament. Okay, let's look at the last two passages, and there's no doubt more questions will come. Okay, and now I'm going to read this, and then the question I want to ask before I explain it, what is it that surprises you here? Go, it says, okay, since this is so, all is here, since this is so, now, what's your approach to life? Go and eat your bread with joy, rejoicing, and drink your wine with a merry heart. Could also be a merry conscience or a good conscience. For God has already approved your works, what you do. Let your clothes always be white, and let perfume not be lacking on your head. See, you could also translate experience, see life with your wife. Not enjoy your wife, but see life with your wife, whom you love all the days of your breath-like life, which he has given you under the sun. All your breath-like days, for that is your lot in life, and in your work at which you work under the sun. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. For there's no doing or planning or knowing or wisdom in the underworld or the grave where you're going. Okay. When you're 6 feet under, there's no work to do anymore. Fairly obvious. Okay, anybody here, what strikes you about this passage? Is there anything that strikes you? Yes? God has already approved your work and the enjoyment that comes as a result of your work. You see, many people have a guilty conscience about what? Enjoying themselves. And this is not just Lutherans, or it's not just Christians, but particularly pagan people have a divided house. They feel that they shouldn't enjoy themselves. And in many cases, what they do, they shouldn't enjoy. If I commit adultery, I shouldn't enjoy that. And if I'm a drunkard, I shouldn't enjoy that. Or if I overindulge in food, I shouldn't enjoy that. But that God has already approved of the work you do and what you get from the work you do. So therefore what? Enjoy eating and drinking. That's God's gift to you. You don't have to do that with a bad conscience. You can do it with a merry heart. Anything else? Yes? Yeah. Give your best. Give it all you've got. And if you give it all you got, well, then you're more likely to experience joy than if you merely go through the motions of living. That's obvious. Do you realize most people don't really live? They just go through the motions of living. You get the living, walking, talking dead everywhere. Right. Sleepwalkers. They're doing work, but they're not giving of themselves in anything that they're doing. Yes, okay, let me unpack this then. Okay, so the first conclusion from all this is the recommendation for rejoicing. Now you get the second conclusion, which gives us 4 keys, if you like, 4 bits of advice for the enjoyment of life. Firstly, eat and drink. Eat with joy and drink. Notice drinking with a good conscience. Why? Because what God gives you, He approves of you, and it's a mark of His approval of your work. Now, people eat, but they don't eat with joy. They drink, and they drink with a bad conscience. I don't think that's so in Australia. We like our grog. But to do so with a merry heart and a good conscience. The second thing is a continual attitude of celebration. When did people put perfume on their heads and dress up in their best gear? White clothes. You don't use white clothes for work because they get dirty. You use white clothes when? When you're enjoying. Okay? This is your best clothes for celebration. So you dress up and you put on the best perfume. It's very interesting, actually, the whole business of perfume, how important that is and what that signals. But it has to do with that attitude of celebration. But normally we put perfume. If you're women, you put perfume on. Men, we put a deodorant, which maybe is a bit perfume-like. But we dress in our best gear on festive occasions. Ecclesiastes says, do it all the time. Wear perfume, which signals that you are enjoying life and you want to get involved with people and enjoy yourself, and wearing clothes, the clothes of celebration. The third advice is the great gift of marriage. And here, once again, it's surprising. I would have expected Ecclesiastes to say, enjoy your wife. And that's what many men do and want to do, and it mucks up the whole business of marriage and sex. The great gift of marriage is not just to focus on the enjoyment of the other person, although that's given, but enjoying life with the other person. With your partner. So enjoy life, experience life, see what God gives you together with your spouse. So sharing the fleeting moments of life and sharing with your spouse. You know, if you enjoy something by yourself, it's not just doubled, but it's squared if you can share it with somebody you love. One of the frustrating things for me over the last 6 weeks has been that I've had all these wonderful experiences and I haven't been able to share them with Claire. And even when I get back home, I can tell her about those things, but that's not the same as actually going through it, enjoying it together. If shared enjoyment is enhanced enjoyment, all of you know that who've married. And if you're not married, well, you have that to look forward to. You share working together, you have time of leisure together. That's God's lot to you in life. So your marriage is part of the good thing that God has given to you. And most importantly, it culminates on the way you do work. Just look at it again. Whatever your hand finds to do, whatever God gives you to do, not the thing in the future, but the given thing. What God gives me today to do, which is taking this session this morning, preaching this evening. Whatever God gives me to do today, do it how? Do it with all your might. Give it all you've got. Go full throttle. Do it wholeheartedly with enthusiasm, zest, and gusto for work. And you know how wonderful it is to be surrounded by people who have a zest for living, who have a sense of gusto, enthusiasm. If people complain and whinge, that's a good Australian term, about work and slack and don't work hard, if they do the minimum, what does that make you do when in the workplace? They're not only miserable, the whole workplace is miserable, and you don't feel like giving it all you've got. On the other hand, have you noticed that if you have just one person who really enjoys what they're doing and does it well, it spreads to other people as well and lifts everybody. The opportunity for these four things, these four keys of enjoyment, which is eating and drinking with a good conscience, having an attitude of celebration for the whole of one's life and in one's work, sharing one's enjoyment with one's spouse, and realizing that your marriage is not eternal. If you don't enjoy your marriage now, you'll never enjoy your marriage. It's going to end. One of you is going to die, and most likely one of you is going to die before the other. Lastly, doing work with all your might, because there's no time to work when you're 6 feet under. So the opportunity for these is given only in this life. This is for this life. There's other things that are eternal, but this is for this life. Yes, Kirby?
Can I ask how this fits in with people who really don't like what they've chosen to do? The search for what it is. We're always trying to help our kids do what you love.
Yeah.
Like, how does that fit in with accepting what finds you? I don't know. I
Yes.
can't. There must be part of us that's supposed to explore what it is that we're given to do.
Yeah.
But sometimes we find ourselves in things that aren't a good match.
Okay, and then it means maybe God's pushing you to go in a different direction. It's
you
what God...
accept that part of the lot.
No.
You do a good job while you're doing it, but you can always be...
It doesn't mean that you're stuck... A lot of people misread this stuff about accepting a lot as being stuck with where you are. Now, notice that the emphasis, everything is a gift from God. And He's the one that gives us work. He's the one that wants to give us joy in our work. And very often, however, people get stuck in work because they have pressure from parents or somebody else, from society, and they don't really follow their heart. They don't follow their passion. They don't follow the things that they know they'll find fulfillment in. So whatever your hand finds to do with means whatever God gives you to do. Not what you're supposed to do, but what God gives you to do. And helping your children find their career paths is very, very difficult at the moment because of the uncertain nature of employment in our modern society. It was very easy when Ecclesiastes wrote this because your father's occupation was basically going to be your occupation. And if you're a woman, okay, it's no problem because your lot was basically to be a daughter and a wife and a mum and a grandmother. So it wasn't complicated then. It becomes immensely complicated now, which leads me to the next and final and most amazing counsel for enjoyment. Light is sweet. It was so jolly good to wake up this morning, open the blind and see the sun shining after the rain yesterday. And to go out and feel the sunlight and to see the light. Light is sweet. And it's good for the eyes to see the sun. Now this is something of a riddle. What's he saying about this? Life is sweet and it's good for the eyes to see the sun. You don't work for sunshine, you merely receive it as a gift. But we aren't however, it could be raining out there, it could be the most beautiful day. As long as we're in here, we don't see the sweetness of the sun. Our eyes don't see what's there for us to enjoy. Okay, now 2 bits of advice for 2 different target groups. So even if a person lives many years, that's me, let him rejoice in them all. That's all. And let him remember that the days of darkness will be many. After all that comes in the future is but a breath. It's passing and it's fleeting. And now, so the old person, rejoice in every part of your life, because life is fleeting. It's over and done all too soon. Secondly, and now there's a real target, young people. Rejoice, you young person, in your youth, and let your heart cheer you. Do you good in the days of your youth. Walk in the ways of your heart and in the sight of your eyes, and know that for all these things God will bring you into judgment. Remove vexation or disappointment, could even be crossness, anger. Remove vexation from your heart in order to banish trouble from your body. For youth and the dawn of life are but a breath. Now, Kirby, part of the answer is here, but I won't come to it straight away. First of all, you have the opening proverb about sunshine and its enjoyment. Now, this is a picture for human life on earth. Remember, the basic question is, what do we get from all the work that is done under the sun? We don't get joy from work, but we get joy in work. The sun of God's gifts shines on everybody, but not everybody receives and enjoys the sunshine. It's a gift for all, but it's enjoyed only by those who experience its sweetness. Just think for a moment of all the good things, the beautiful things that are given us every day, and we don't even notice it, just in the world around us. I went for a bike ride yesterday, the old railway track behind Scott's Place. I was thinking just how utterly beautiful your autumn trees are. And I could have stopped at any point and just looked at and seen just the amazing beauty that was all around me. But you realise I was the only person there enjoying all that beauty. And even I could take in only a little bit of what was there. In fact, one of the most interesting things was that it rained and I had to take shelter at the St. James Park while it was raining, and that made me stop still and just look at what was all around me and take it in. And to see how sweet it is, how beautiful it is, and how lucky you guys are to live in this kind of climate. We don't have this kind. We have Australia's beautiful, but it's beautiful in a different way to here. That's the basic proverb. Light is sweet. Now, what has it go? Light is sweet, and it's good for the eyes to do what? To see the sun. So it's sweet. Not everybody else sees the sweetness of it. Only some people do. Now, you get 2 bits of concluding advice. Now, this touches on 2 of the biggest problems that cripple us in life. When you're old and getting old, then the basic thing for most people my age is that they feel that they have nothing left to enjoy anymore, and all the joys that they have is in the past, and basically the further they go in life, the less they'll have to enjoy. And so old people like me look back with nostalgia on the good old days. I think that happens here in America too, as well as Australia. On the other hand, for young people, it's the opposite thing. It's funny. When you're young, you've been given the most to enjoy, and yet young people very often are the most miserable people in our society. Truly, just think of your teenage children and how miserable they were.
No, they just make us miserable.
They make us miserable, and they continue to do it even when they get older. Okay, now, there's something funny going on when we're young that sabotages us right at the beginning, sabotages our capacity for enjoyment. Now, I could explain this in many ways. The first one, when you're old looking back because you've got nothing to look forward to, young people, part of the problem is you look forward and you want to have everything all at once. And you try out, and when you're young, basically, you try out something and you fail. You've got to fail. You say, okay, you go out, you're a young guy, let's say 15 or so, and you go out with a girl and you think, oh, this is just wonderful. And what happens? The whole thing just goes cactus. And then you become disappointed and angry and cynical, and you know the way it is. And you basically go sour on women, and it takes you years to recover from the first disappointment. Okay? That because you fail doesn't mean that you have failed. Because something wasn't as enjoyable as you wanted it to be, because, initially, the kind of picture that I had when I was a teenager, I wanted the kind of enjoyment with Claire, or people of the opposite sex, that I have now. But that's not the way it is when you are 15 and 16. You've got to learn how to get on with the opposite sex. And that's a difficult business. Take it from me. Okay, now, the concluding advice. First of all, you old guys, you people, the other side of, they would have said 40, but maybe it's 45 or 50. Mature person, okay? The days of darkness are many. Ecclesiastes says, we are given good things to enjoy at each stage of our life, and we are to rejoice in every stage. And it means no matter how old you are, even if you're sick and unwell, you have still good things to enjoy. And you enjoy every stage of your life. And what gives you to enjoy, what God gives you to enjoy. You rejoice daily in passing blessings. There's still things to come, and the best always is, for a Christian, the best is always still in front of us, if we have eyes to see and ears to hear. Now, on the other hand, just listen to what he says about the young people. Rejoice, you young person, in your youth, and let your heart cheer you, do you good in the days of your youth. Why, and how do you do that? Walk in the ways of your heart. Walk in the ways of your heart. Modern way of putting it, follow your passion. Whatever your heart, where your heart is, go after it. Walk in that way. Don't go in the life that other people map out for you. Follow the way of your heart. What your passion is. What you know is best for you. And in the sight of your eyes. Those two things are together. The ways of your heart, what you want, where your passion is, and the sight of your eyes means the opportunities that God gives you. I might set my heart on this, but then maybe God knows that this is not the best for me, and he gives me this opportunity. Okay? So on the one hand, you have that passion that you pursue, but also you follow the sight of your eyes, which means the things that are given for you to see and experience. I might have set there were some very attractive girls in my teenage years, and I thought, wouldn't it be great to go out with them? Okay, and maybe I remember idolizing certain women in my life and thinking, it would be just heavenly to have them. That was the passion, that was the desire of my heart. But then God gave me my wife. It's not what I expected, but it was something far better than I expected. Follow the sight of your eyes, and know that for all these things God will bring you into judgment. Now, this is a funny word. Remove vexation or disappointment from your heart. Notice the emphasis on the heart. And if you remove vexation from your heart, then you'll, in order to banish trouble from your body. Why all these things? Because youth and the dawn of life are but a breath. You're only young for a very short space in life. And very often we embitter ourselves permanently in our youth, and the capacity for enjoyment is crippled somewhere between the ages of 12 to 20 or beyond. Okay, the conclusion then for young people: don't rejoice in some future thing, but rejoice in the present. Follow what's given to enjoy, and enjoy. So following what's given to enjoy, and enjoying in what you experience when it's experienced. So both you have the passion of your heart and the opportunities as God presents you. If my relationship with this girl, I'm a teenager, breaks down, it means that we're not really suited for each other, and it opens the door for a relationship with some other woman, some other girl. And that might break down, which means that there's an opportunity for something even better to come, more suitable for me. If I fail this exam, it opens, you think the end of the world's happened when you're a young person, but for every door that's closed, new doors open, and you follow them. Okay, Kirby, do you see how this answers your question? It's this opening and closing of doors, the passion, but then the opportunities as they present themselves in life. Now, what is God going to judge you for? He says, and remember and know that for all these things God will bring you into judgment. Now, most people interpret this totally wrong and put a but here, saying, okay, follow your heart and the sight of your eyes, but watch out, don't do the wrong thing. Because if you do the wrong thing, God will judge you. So you've got to be ultra cautious, ultra careful in life that you don't muck it up. No. For what will God call you into judgment? A Jewish rabbi puts it well. Now listen to this, because this is utterly remarkable. About this passage, a great Jewish commentator says, on the day of judgment, God will call each of us into account for all the good things that God called us to do and enjoy that we did not do and enjoy. Now that's a different spin. Okay, on the day of judgment, God will call you to account for all the blessings that he wanted to give to you that you basically rejected. On the day of judgment, God will call you to account for every good thing that he called you to do and every good gift that he wanted you to enjoy, but you refused to receive from his hand. So one of the keys for enjoyment when you're young is to get rid of that sense of disappointment and the anger and cynicism that comes from failure and disappointment. Okay, the reason for this is that youth and its opportunities are fleeting. They are not repeated. Things change most quickly in life during those years from when you're from puberty through to marriage. Now, rather than age, but that stage in life. They're the most complex parts of our lives when all sorts of things are being sorted out, but they're the most fleeting and formative things in our lives. And whether we are going to be cheerful old people or miserable, bitter old people basically is determined by what happens to us in that stage of life, those years of opportunity. Okay, what has God in store for us? He wants us to rejoice in every stage of life, beginning when we're young and going all the way to when we're old until we finally cark it. Questions? Remarks? Yes.
You mentioned it's determined by what happens to us in that period, but it's primarily how we experience what happens.
It's not just what happens. The important thing is how we experience it, and whether we receive the good things that God wants to give to us. What happens to us can be negative, and what we do can be negative, but it's whether we receive God's gifts to us at that stage particularly, but at every stage of our lives. God, Paul says, gives us all things richly to enjoy. That's God's plan and purpose for you, not just as a Christian, but his plan and purpose for every human being. So these gifts of enjoyment are not just for Christians, but every person who lives a good life can enjoy these gifts from God. Yes?
It's scary the people that say, I can never retire because I wouldn't know what to do with myself.
Yep.
I can find a place for them in the garden club at St. John's.
Okay, here's a promotion. Yes. You guys are about to retire. Yes. Plenty do. Yeah. Do you realise one of the most profound things is that Christians never retire? Because we have the funny thing that work is only paid work. There's always work for us to do as human beings. There's always work for us to do as Christians. Christians never retire until they get the permanent retirement, and with all its benefits. Okay, and it's very important that old people, just as young people need work, old people need to have work too. One of the most pathetic things that I see happening to people my age is them basically, here you head for the south, you head for Florida, and old people when they retire adopt a hedonistic lifestyle. They withdraw from their family, they withdraw from church, they withdraw from their community and go down there into those big old people's parks and things, and they live a hedonistic lifestyle in every way, just eating and drinking, and there's a lot of sexual problems down there. They indulge themselves sexually in every way. This is utterly pathetic. And then when the bottom falls out of their life, they wonder why they have no place. Their families are not interested in them anymore. Their communities, they can't fit in because they're disconnected from it. And the congregations that they come back to regard them with some sort of suspicion because they don't come to contribute, they merely come to claim things and demand things from congregation. That's pathetic, this hedonistic way of life for people after retirement. Here's me, the moralist, talking. Yes. Yes, Kirby.
Some people are inclined, or they're given the gift of being able to enjoy things. They see
Yes.
the enjoyment, and other people maybe aren't given that gift. Is
Yes.
that something you can work on? Or
Yes.
I met this in Scott's first parish. There was this lovely woman who was uprooted by her son for his convenience
Yes.
from everything she knew. And she was the happiest person
Yes.
I've ever met. I loved being around her. And she would just come over and walk with
Yes.
me. She just found ways to make her life happy and useful.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't know how that could be. Like,
Yes.
I tend to be a happy person, but
Yes.
but that was just an amazing thing to see. And I thought, I want to be like her when
Yes.
I'm 80 years old.
Yes.
But I don't know how you make sure you stay on that path, I guess. Or if you're not given to it completely.
Yes. It has to do with going back right to the beginning. This is divine wisdom. A wise person is a person who is given to do this. Now, there's certain things that contribute towards it. One is that if you have come from a family where mum and dad basically live in this way, then it's much easier for you to live this way. I have a mother and a father, particularly mother, who is a contented woman. Now, contented women, at least in my generation, were very rare. Most women, my mother's age, were frustrated. From a human point of view, she should have been a frustrated woman, but she was content. At all stages of her life, she was content. And so there was this gift of contentment that rubbed off to Dad. My father was an impatient man, and he was never really contented until he was an old man. But Mum had that gift of contentment. She accepted her lot, and wherever she was, she received whatever God gave her to do, and her basic focus was not on her own enjoyment, but creating joy for other people. That gift of contentment, that's one thing. The other thing is just, it starts off with little things, just accepting and receiving things as from God. The little things lead to the bigger things. But notice that the importance of how much we are helped in this by other people. If you have, in this congregation, you can have people who are miserable, people who complain. Okay, what do? They destroy joy in this congregation. If you have complaining people in the family, they destroy the joy in the family. On the other hand, you have thankful, grateful, contented people who are generous people. They create joy in a community. So, a lot of this is communal rather than individual. And all of you can do a great deal for each other and for children and everybody who comes here within this church, with this congregation. There's a lot there, Kirby, but that's for the main thing. And I'll repeat again how important the gift of contentment is, both for not just for women, I spoke to my mother, but also for men who are contented with their lot, who are contented with their marriage, contented with their children, contented with their work, contented with their retirement, contented with their friendship, contented with the congregation, contented with life as a whole. And once that gift is given to you, then you not only have enjoyment, but you give enjoyment to other people and create the kind of climate where they can enter into the same kind of experience. Yes?
In an inappropriate sense of duty.
Just a bit louder, please.
Can an inappropriate sense of duty or responsibility also impede?
Absolutely. The sense of grim determination. I'm doing this not because I want to, but because I have to. Doing work and doing the Lord's work because I have to. There's a big difference between that and doing it because I want to. Big difference. It's doing the same thing, but it's doing it out of joy rather than doing it out of, duty. I mean, duty is a good word, but grim duty. Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. Yeah. And working with enjoyment. Yes. And that's a great gift. Not working because you have to or because your life's empty, but working because for the joy in the work. And that's a great gift indeed. One of the most amazing experiences that I've had in this visit was to spend some time with Dr. Norman Nagel. It was an hour, a precious little moment of life. He's a mentor of your pastor. He has had a stroke and he's confined to bed at an old folks facility, and yet at the same time I asked him if he was depressed. He can't do anything. He's difficult. He can't read for a man like in his stage. He has limited contact with people, mainly nurses, his wife Betsy, and occasionally people like me Scott come to visit him, and it's always a joy because instead of him being miserable, I go away there feeling that he's given me joy. And I asked him, was he ever depressed? And he paused for a long time because he's difficulty speaking. He said, no. How could I be depressed. How could I be depressed? From a human point of view, he has got nothing to enjoy. He's got nothing to look forward to, and yet he is full of joy. And I came away from there filled with joy. Instead of him, very old, often old miserable people drain from you. They take the joy away from you. For him, it's the opposite. He gave me joy just to be there with him. Remarkable from a human point of view. Yes?
When you're in a situation in life where you have things to enjoy from a human point of view,
Yes.
is there a certain discipline or some sort of training that you need to prepare yourself to enjoy life when you don't have human loss?
No, I don't think you have to. There's a certain discipline, there's disciplined enjoyment, okay, which means that you don't try and hold on to things and you don't take more than it's given to you to receive. So you don't eat more, even though you could eat more, than is given for your enjoyment. You don't drink more than is given to you to drink. You enjoy sex, but you don't become a sex addict. And so then which ruins the whole business of sexuality. You enjoy work, but you don't become a workaholic. Now, that's the basic discipline. But rather than focus, it's a positive discipline rather than a negative discipline, if you understand what I'm saying. It's working within the givens and the limits of the given. So my lot means that I've been given what God knows is good for me, but that's not the same as what's good for you. And part of the discipline is that discipline of contentment. Now, I saw that with my mother. She was a disciplined person in the sense of being content with the givens in her life at all stages of her life, including finally when she had Alzheimer's. Now, this is the real test, because when a person becomes it was probably more senile dementia. She was old and she had it. But always when people at the end of their life go into this stage, their dominant characteristic is, in a sense, predominates. So people who are careful with money become stingy and miserly. People who are suspicious become paranoid. The worst in them comes out. Do you know what came out in my mother when she could no longer remember who I was? It was a sense of enjoyment and happiness and contentment even in the state of Alzheimer's, which is quite remarkable, but that was because that was the kind of person that with God's grace she had been disciplined to become. That was her character. Okay, anything else? Okay, we've finished, Scott. Nothing left to discuss. There is a handout, a summary of an article that I wrote, and I focus on the term happiness because that was what was given to me to write from Ecclesiastes. You can read it, and a lot of what I've said is summarised there. And as a promotion for tonight and tomorrow, the Old Testament reading for this Sunday is this number 4, the central one. I'll be preaching on that tomorrow.
Thanks very much. Come back tomorrow. More of the same.